5:02, so I need to call this meeting to order.
Right.
Our first order of business is to review the minutes from the annual meeting February 22nd, 2021, I think from the meeting.
Yeah, I need to take annual off. I'm going to cross it off. I keep forgetting to edit that. Sorry.
All commissioners, you have received the minutes.
Right. I move that they're accepted.
Thank you. Do I have
Byron.
Byron is seconding? All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Resident and citizen participation is exactly where I wanted to introduce Alicia Underwood, who Christine is telling me a bit about, but I'd love to hear from you. What got you interested in Brattleboro Housing Partnership, and what kind of thing are you doing now, Alicia?
Sure. So Lorelei Morset reached out to me about this position, and I've been working with her as the Rise Vermont Program Manager for Brattleboro Memorial Hospital and Windham County. So I've been working with Lorelei to try to make healthy choices easy choices for residents at Ledgewood and Moore Court specifically. So we've been just brainstorming on different projects that we can find alternative funding for and different policies that we can do together. So that is what I've been doing since 2019. The program manager working with schools and community organizations to help make healthy choice an easy choice for all people, but focusing on children and families.
Wonderful. I think you and Liz are going to have, you've already met out at Grace Cottage. You have a lot together. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I met Liz and Christine through my previous role as the self-management blueprint program coordinator for Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. So I did that for 3 years, and I'm still a facilitator of diabetes prevention programs, and I coordinated all 5 different programs, and as well as did the scheduling and the referral management for the community health team. And so I went into the different housing sites through SASH programs mostly, and did a couple presentations at Oak Grove. I mean, sorry, not at Ledgewood and at Moore Court on the tobacco cessation programs.
You are wonderfully tuned in to all of the opportunities we have.
I'm very impressed with her at Grace Cottage, believe me.
Well, it fits in very neatly to our next business, which is Board of Commissioners business. And we've talked about board orientation, roles, and communication discussion. Thinking particularly, we've had some not difficulties, but challenges about what's proper for board, what's proper for management, where do we intersect? And Christine and I have thought that it might be helpful to have a consultant to work with us in a separate meeting to both organize board orientation and review the separate pieces that go into policy setting and overview and management to implementation, which is staff. So I have 2 suggestions. One is Nancy Mosier, who has been the facilitator for a number of years for Brattleboro Housing Partnership. She was the one who worked with the board when we decided to change the name from Brattleboro Housing Authority to Brattleboro Housing Partnership. And after the flood, when there was a lot of reorganization of both the staff, not so much the board, but the board was certainly involved in it and changing the name. And then Christine has also suggested a group of 3 who are working with the staff on, Christine, help me on this.
It's our employee assistance program. We have an organization that we work with. They used to be called Thrive, and they changed their name, and now I can't think of what it is. It's like it's not as easy to remember as Thrive, but I will look it up really quickly. And they offer employee assistance program to our staff, and they will be working with our staff a little bit on just laying the foundation for our strategic planning, just to set up a little workshop to talk about how to better communicate and sort of like get the juices flowing so that we will be better. So once we start talking, we'll be better at communicating with one another. Hold on one second. So the new name is not Thrive. It's Aptiva Human Resources, and it's a local employee program. And she knows Brattleboro housing, but she doesn't know the nuances of public housing the way Nancy does. I mean, Nancy has worked with us for a decade, and I continue to work with her a little bit, but she really understands public housing. So I think they would both be great. I just wanted to offer two options to the board.
And the board, this would be an extra meeting for us. And it would be, go ahead. Liz?
I think the concept is excellent. And however you want to, put it together for an extra meeting, I think that this is excellent.
Okay. Byron, thoughts? Donna?
I agree. I think it's a good idea.
Great. Byron?
I've already forgotten the names of the people that were suggested, but it struck me maybe 3 people is a little much for this task, and the single person
Nancy Mosher.
sounded very good.
So do we want to make a definite decision now or consult and find a time if either Aptiva or Nancy Mosher, can we fit together the times that board members are free and they are free? That might end up making the decision.
I would think that one person coordinating this would be, I mean, I don't know Activa. Maybe they have tools and thoughts that we need to hear. And so since I'm not knowledgeable about either one of these options, Christine and Jan, can you offer a wider scope? Either one is fine with me. But to have one person coordinate is a thought.
Janet, do you have any feelings one way or the other?
I do. And I feel that Nancy Mosher's history with Brattleboro Housing will be a great resource to us, because one of the things that happens in organizations, you lose organizational history as people go on and off the board. So bringing us all together with a greater understanding of public housing, I think would be of great benefit.
That sounds good.
So I'd like to propose that we not have a vote on this, but create a request to Nancy Mosher and to the board to identify times when we might be able to come together. And then once we have a time, then officially ask her, may we hire her and set a time? Does that work for people?
Yes, that sounds good.
Yes.
Okay, and Donna?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so we will go on to our 5th issue on the agenda, which is COVID-19 update.
So for the COVID-19 update, we've had more staff members receive the vaccine. We have a few members who are in the process, they're scheduled, so we're getting closer. So that's great. And we have changed our policy in-house that if people are fully vaccinated, meaning that it's been the 2 full weeks since their last vaccination, or the 4 weeks, depending on whatever the vaccination they have, then they will be able to, they can travel out of state and not quarantine. And so we, since the beginning, we've really aligned ourselves with the protocol of the state. It was easy to not have that gray area. And so when there was this change, we decided to do the same thing. We're still following all the same safety protocols, masks, taking all the precautions. We still have to do the log, but taking our temperature every day. But we have allowed that for staff who have been fully vaccinated.
Excellent. Staff reports and review. This property portfolio manager and property manager is the big. I finally have decided that it's important for me to go through the agenda and mark the color of these forms. All of these will be coming for you, Alicia. Jack Mahoney, please, what's his official title?
He's the portfolio manager. Mm-hmm.
And the portfolio is the Sam Elliott Apartments, Red Clover Commons.
It's all of our properties. So his job is really overseeing all the property, the big project property. He doesn't have the nuances of the maintenance leader, but he's overseeing any of the big projects, which there's a lot. So, and he's the go-to for all of that. So.
Any comments, Christine, from you and others on the report?
Well, I will say one exciting piece is that we are installing Wi-Fi at Sam Elliott Apartments and Red Clover Commons. We had a little bit of grant money, which goes to our SASH program that we usually use for programming, but we decided to use it to make sure that we could get Wi-Fi in the building so that residents could use. We received a grant and we received iPads for our SASH program. And so they can use them whether they want to visit with their family members or attend doctor's appointments remotely. We just thought that would be a great use of that funds since people are being remote, and it was a great opportunity to do that. So I'm hoping, we're really just getting everything installed now, but I think our residents, once they find out, they're going to be really excited.
That's wonderful. And Melrose Terrace, which is still our public housing, it's deteriorating in many ways, but also being cleared because it was badly damaged in the flood. There are bids to replace the roof on Melrose Terrace maintenance shop. Will maintenance materials and so forth stay there?
For now, that is the plan. I think that we would stay here for at least a few more years, so it makes sense to do the roof.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the resident wellness and services.
Oh, I think one piece was the property management report. That's the blue one.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. They're kind of lumped together.
They are indeed. Thank you. Leasing up units at a steady pace, currently renting RAD units that have become vacant within the last 60 to 90 days. You talk about a unit transfer in process at A.W. Richards, which will result in the studio unit becoming vacant at the end of March. Are you having success with renting studio units? I remember at Hayes Court for a while, they were less desirable.
They are less desirable. What happens is a lot of times people get into a studio and then want to transfer. So that's a little tricky for us. It causes a problem for that. And I think that's what the situation was with the AWR. So they put in a reasonable accommodation to transfer, and then they transfer to a 1-bedroom once it becomes available. I think at this point, the housing market is so tight, we're not having a problem housing those units, but people get in them, and some people love them, less clutter, less stuff, but some people really would like to then transfer afterwards, which it just kind of creates a domino effect.
Yes, indeed. The move in report and move out report. There was nothing on the move out report, so to indicate people do come and try to stay. The rent collection, the percentage not collected in Melrose Terrace is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think that just, those get thrown off very quickly if things are, I think that we had a couple of people behind. They might have paid after the report was pulled. That happens a lot. And then also I think we have one vacancy, like we're not filling any units anymore. So if somebody's not here, we have 2 units right now that are vacant. We're not filling them anymore because we're moving people. We're already in the process of getting people prepared to move, that we're not rehousing any longer.
And the Moorport report, percentage collected.
Yeah, so we have very low numbers, as you'd see at our Ledgewood and Moorcourt. We did have a lot of people apply for the rental subsidy through the state of Vermont, through the CARES Act funding. And that money we just received last week.
Oh.
So some of the fund, and that was up until the end of the year. And so when they haven't opened the funding yet, but for this year now, but we just received the funding, so it didn't make it onto this report. So I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say it was around $16,000. So it will dramatically change those numbers because most of the people who applied for the funding were from our family sites.
Okay. And that's why, Alicia, I'm so delighted that your knowledge of the family sites is both more up to date and more connected with what you're doing at the hospital.
Can I ask about the COVID back rent money?
Mhm.
Is that being helpful, or where is that at?
So the money that ended at the end of 2020, the money that was allocated for the CARES Act funding that ended 2020, there was still some funds that hadn't yet to be released, and we just received them last week. It's very helpful, the funding. However, the funding that will essentially be for this year. They haven't rolled out exactly what the stipulations will be yet. It's still going through the state of Vermont, but my understanding is they hired a private contractor to facilitate the funding because it was so burdensome. There was so much work. And so I did receive some information from their lawyer last week saying that it's in process, but we haven't gotten all the rules yet. And so I don't know yet if our residents will be eligible. I hope that they're continue to be eligible for their portion of the rent that's not federally subsidized, but I don't know what the rules are yet.
Does that answer your question, Byron?
Yeah.
But I do know that many residents are hopeful that they'll be able to apply. We have seen residents not paying their rent with the hope that they'd be able to apply for these funds.
And the funds were from the federal government to help people who weren't able to pay their rent.
Yes. But I don't know if there will be a stipulation that it's only people directly affected, like if their job was if they directly had a loss in income due to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
If there's that stipulation, then some of our residents wouldn't fall into that allocation because they might have, they might already receive Social Security, or they might already, it could be that their income hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the one thing we are learning is that even with subsidized rent, people still have a hard time paying their rent.
Yeah.
Christine,
Yes.
is there a plan, or do we know what we're going to do? Like if we have residents that have applied, for this funding, for this relief, and they don't get it and they haven't paid rent up until now, how will we handle that?
Well, hopefully we'll get information soon so that most people who applied up until the end of the year have been funded. So that's great. hopefully we'll know soon to let people know. You know, we've been communicating with people that we don't know what's going to happen. So you might not want to get behind because it would be hard to dig out. Right now, there's an eviction moratorium. We couldn't start legal process to evict somebody based on not paying rent anyway. I think that we'll need to really see, I think we'll see where we are. Our hope is that our residents will be able to apply for this funding. If they can't, then I think we need to come up with a plan of what that would look like. Right now, we don't offer repayment agreements. We find that they are really more problems than they're worth. They don't really help. And so, but maybe that's something that we have to relook at because this is a different situation than before COVID.
Yeah, just
So we've
sounds like
started to talk a lot about it, but I think we won't really have a plan until we know for sure. I'm hopeful that our residents will be able to apply for this funding.
In the past, we have, where necessary, forgiven unpaid rent.
Mhm.
But it has been isolated situations rather than this much more extensive one.
Mhm.
And we certainly make every effort to collect the rent
Mhm.
because it affects everyone.
And I think we also know that the housing situation in their community is so tight. If people lost our housing, they wouldn't find, it would be really hard to find other housing, especially at the deep subsidy that they receive here. And so that would be another crisis for our community. So I think I think it's a great question, Donna. I think we have to be really deliberate on how we go forward. I think my plan is that hopefully our residents will qualify for this additional funding or at least part of it. And then we sort of start having these conversations of this isn't going to last forever. We need a plan and we really want to keep you housed because we have a long list of people right now that need housing. So there's not going to be, so there's a lot of people that need to have housing. And so we need to come up with a plan to help you, to support you to pay your rent.
I had thought I might start the meeting and then didn't by reading the mission of Brattleboro Housing Partnerships. It is the mission of Brattleboro Housing Partnerships to ensure the provision of quality, low income, and affordable housing within viable communities to support independence and create opportunity. So all of these questions go to that mission.
Very true.
On to now resident wellness and services, the yellow from Lorelei Morissette. And she says February is a short month, but is always packed full, and it certainly is. They've done a brochure, updated Sharps protocol flyers at all sites, working to follow up the COVID calls we've started over a year ago, and look forward to seeing how things have changed. I'm fascinated by the partnership with Vermont Affordable Housing Coalition. Evernorth Connections has completed a second round of a long-term survey project to better understand how low-income households throughout Vermont are managing through the ongoing COVID crisis. So there are graphs of what people are aware of, unearned income in the past 30 days, earned income in the past 30 days, and at least 7 residents who answered no or I don't know on the above question, is the service coordinator or caseworker available, live in properties where case management is available. So I think they're doing a lot of thinking about communication. Anything more? Let's see. I remember reading that this month we've also made a great connection with Vermont Affordable Housing and their project, Vermont Resident Organizing Network. They will be meeting with Resident Advisory and Communications Committee to do a presentation. Anything more that you want to highlight on this, Christy?
I think that the last time we met, we approved Brattleboro Housing Partnerships to apply for a Vista grant. We were received. We're excited to say yes, we were received. We did receive the allocation. We have to submit a formal proposal, which Lorelai's been working on, and she just sent me, which I haven't had a chance to review. But so that's exciting.
Follow up on last month's meeting. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And this might be a good time to share. I shared with Janet before this. May I share a little bit about this family SASH?
Could I just ask a question
Yes.
about the Vista?
Yes.
Are we into recruiting for that?
We have not started that process yet. Right now, we're just finishing that formal. Our initial application was approved, and so now we're just submitting our formal plan, and then we'll be able to begin the recruitment.
And from here, it goes to 2022. So it's a little over a year.
Mhm.
Any more comments, Byron?
No.
Okay. So we'll go further into SASH. The SASH implementation manager. Sean Brown. So approximately 70% of eligible participants have received, been registered for their first vaccine. And approximately 55% have received their first dose, and 6 residents who've received both doses of the vaccine at rehab stays. So what I'm reading here is that they're beginning to be able to have more shared events. And Shauna is saying residents have shared with staff that they're eager to participate in activities such as bingo, Friday morning coffee hour, exercise groups, walking club, gardening club, and art classes, to name a few.
Yes, I think they're ready to get back. So these numbers, the 70% was for our, was based out of the RCC panel specifically. We have a little bit of lower numbers at at our resident site of Hayes Court and Samuel Elliott Apartments. But we have seen that up at Cathedral Square, where SASH originated, they have started some community, allowing some community spaces to be open, but very limited, like chairs sort of 6 feet apart and people having to wear masks. So not the formal programming that we had, but allowing some community spaces. And I think that we're starting to look at the possibility of doing that as well. I think we need to have a better understanding of how many of our residents are vaccinated on site.
And the SASH at home coordinator, Jake Bursky. Comment on.
I had a question about the lack of funding and staff to provide home care services. Whom do we turn to for, do we
Well, some of the,
have any arrangement with Bayada or hospice or?
Yes, we do. I mean, we work with hospice, Bayada, and the visiting nurses. Where are you seeing that, Byron? I missed that piece.
At the bottom of page 3, the very bottom.
Oh, right. So Shauna had attended a meeting with Senior Solutions. And these are some of the topics that had come up at the Senior Solutions meeting. One common concern about the discussion was the lack of funding and staff to provide home care services, homemaking throughout the whole community. That's not just at our housing, that's everywhere. And so that's a big community need. Yeah, we don't provide that at all through through the housing, but we do have, we do connect with the VNA in Vallarta to do that. Some people do it privately, or there are private people that work in the community to support residents as well. But it is a huge need. It has been for years, just the shortage.
And talking about a 2-year waiting list.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's why RCC is such a great location, because it's so convenient to many of the places that people can go to shop. It makes, we get a lot more services in that building, because sometimes homemakers will work with 3 people at once and go shopping for all of them. And, we've had to be very creative that way, but there is a tremendous shortage. It's a hard job to fill. It doesn't pay a lot. And it's, it's hard work sometimes. Yep.
I've got a question. Wellness nurse Jenna Ross is going to be resigning. And is this job going to be put out for applicants, or just you're going to go with the wellness nurse of Valley Cares? Because I have somebody in mind.
No, we have posted it. So it's the position is a per diem position. It's a hired contractor. It's not a BHP employee. So we have posted it on LinkedIn. It's posted around. I can send that to you, Liz.
Yeah, please do. And I'll forward it to the person I'm thinking of.
Okay. And the hospital today, I just was at a meeting, and Rebecca Burns, who is the head of the community health team, she suggested that we partner. She suggested we have a conversation and partner with the hospital, because the hospital has been using their nurses to contract out for groundworks and health works, and that would be an option for us as well. So we'll connect with them too.
Yeah, good.
Ready to move on to family self-sufficiency? And the coordinator here collaborates with community partners to support participants by connecting them to resources to meet educational and employment goals.
It's good that the escrow amounts have risen a little bit. So that's a positive sign.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's good.
I wonder if you would explain to Alicia what the escrow, how the escrow happens.
Yes. So when people live in public housing, their rent is based on their income. And so if somebody gets a new job and they make more money, then their rent would be 30% of that new amount. So it can go up, which is sort of frustrating for people, as you can imagine. It would be frustrating for me. And so if they're part of the FSS program and they're in the program and their income goes up, then that money, even though they still continue to pay that difference in funds. So let's say their rent went from $300 a month to $350. The $50 every month, they would still pay it, but it would be escrowed. And so when they finish the program and they graduate from the program, let's say after 5 years, they would receive that money. And so we've had some people, be unemployed and get a job. And so there was a big difference in income, and they've left the program after 5 years with $20,000. I mean, that was a big success story. Usually they're around $5,000 to $7,000. That's the big number, but it's still like a really nice, sizable amount of money. And so when it works really well.
And seeing drafts of brochures that were passed out to us.
So the team, the wellness and services team, so you see the SASH flash that we have monthly. It's a smaller version. I couldn't figure out how to print it bigger, but for you, but you can still see it. It looks great. And then the wellness and services team has also been doing a lot of work on the internal communication tree. I think it's been really helpful, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
To hold this up.
They did a lot of work on this. I mean, it took months because they really thought about every scenario and how it would work. And they did I think, an excellent job.
Well, I'm just thinking of safety checks and resident passing.
Yes.
What to do if you find somebody unresponsive as a good decision tree.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great. It's been really helpful. And Jeannie, who answers our phone,
Mhm.
has said that it's just been really helpful for her. She's really the hub of the communication. And so sometimes she would send something to the wrong person or not call the right person, and someone would be left out. And so she has found it to be very helpful. But I think for all of us, it's great. I have it right on my desk. Like, I look at it all the time because even I forget sometimes of who the right person would be for certain scenarios.
Well, it's, as a social worker, I know that people panic when crises happen. This helps you move from one things to another and provides a baseline of, I've got a plan. I can operate on that. Now, you talked about a pilot with Windsor Housing Trust on a family SASH. Can you talk a little more about that?
Sure. So this week, Molly Dugan, who works at the SASH program, she was one of the pioneers of the SASH program up in Cathedral Square, asked to meet with Elizabeth Bridgewater and I about potentially having family SASH brought to Brattleboro. We are the designated regional housing organization for SASH, so we would be facilitating the grant, but Wyndham Windsor would have a panel as well as we would have a panel. So we would have two different panels serving each of our populations. And that grant would allow for one full-time coordinator specifically for the family sites, one part-time nurse,
Mhm.
and a part-time mental health clinician. And we would facilitate that program specifically just for Ledgewood and Moorcourt. And then Wyndham Windsor would do their own program and their housing sites, which would look a little different. It would be more of like a community SASH because their housing sites are more spread out.
Mhm.
And Molly brought this to us because they really want to pilot this project. They want to pilot this somewhere. They're looking for funding, but they want to have a place to say, we're going to do it here. And I think Elizabeth and I had a lot of questions, but I think we were primed for this because this is not something that's new to either of us. So I think we both really have been looking for something that will support our families and the community. And so, and we, myself and Lorelei and Chris Hart, we've been talking about having a family SASH for years. I mean, we were trying to figure out how to do it without the money. So having the money will be huge. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to go to Moving to Work, was to do this programming for our family sites. We knew there's this big gap. And so I talked about it a little bit with the managers and Lorelei and Shauna. And I talked about it with our resident advisory communication committee today, and they were very interested. They had a lot of questions, but were very interested. And I said that I was bringing it to the board. One thing to know is we don't have funding yet, so we don't have it. However, with the way things are working right now with funding through COVID, it's like you get it before you know it. You just get it and then you roll on with it. So we wanted to be mentally prepared and also structurally prepared so that we could do this in a deliberate way. We'll have a lot of support from Cathedral Square, but we will be pioneering this as well. We'll be developing it. And I think that we're a great place to do it, to replicate it in other places. I don't think there's any place better than Brattleboro to try to do this and to show the two populations and how they both have needs, but they might be slightly different. I think it's, I think that, structurally for us, we already have the Wellness and Services Group. We've laid this foundation. We've created this. We already have a resident advisory committee. We've laid that foundation. I think that we're in some ways ready to go. We've already started these conversations with Moving to Work. We're moving to a Moving to Work agency. So I don't think it would be as difficult. I don't think it would be a heavy lift the way it might have been 5 years ago. I think we put our pieces together to do this. So does anyone have any questions about that? I know it's a lot to give you, but I just wanted to offer a very brief overview because you'll be hearing about it hopefully much more in the next couple of months.
Sounds like a very nice piece of work.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I remember as we were instituting SASH, that instead of trying to create our own medical team, we're using the community's medical team.
Mm-hmm.
which makes such good sense.
Mhm. Yes, I talked about it today at the Accountable Communities for Health meeting that we had, and we had representation from the ED from HCRS, from the Winston Prouty Center, the hospital, the Department of Health, Groundworks, everybody. I mean, they've always been asking me, when are we going to get SASH for Medicaid recipients? So finally I said, well, we got some good news. It's not 100%, but we're going in the right direction. And they were all ready. I think the hospital, you know, our partnership with the hospital is so good. We're ready to just get this going.
That's great. So we have the housing lavender form from David DeAngelis on section 8. Continue with 132 housing choice and non-RAD rental assistance demonstration projects is RAD based vouchers leased, and 3 housing choice recipients searching since spring of 2020. Talk about how tight housing is. We remain at 8 RAD tenants searching with a voucher as well. We did lease up a homeless youth at the Snow Block this month, who receives support from Youth Services. Section 8 wait list was opened on February 16th, first time since 2014. And has closed now, March 15th. As of this writing on the 15th, we've received approximately 364 applications, of which 190 are non-resident and 15 may qualify for the mainstream voucher.
Can I ask what that is?
Excuse me?
The mainstream voucher is the voucher that we recently received. We received, I think, 40 mainstream vouchers. And it was that voucher that David came to talk about that we got a preference for. So when we decided to take the voucher, the board had decided to have a preference that 10% of the voucher could be used, or 20% of the voucher could be used specifically for people who are formerly homeless. So it was a way of transitioning our residents off of some of our permanently supported housing programs who have been on it for years, but they just don't have a voucher to get off, but they don't need permanent supported housing anymore. So they would move on to the mainstream voucher, which means you have to be, you can't be a senior, but you have to have a disability or have someone in your household have a disability. So that's the mainstream voucher, was that a mainstream voucher can be a senior, anyone that's not a senior and has a disability. And so those were we just received them from HUD recently, and we created a preference specifically to move some of the people off of shelter plus care and transitions. That's our permanently supported housing program, because they don't need permanent support. Not all of them need it anymore. So like if they've been on it for 10 years, they might not need to have that anymore, that they could just have a voucher, but they stayed on the program because we just didn't want them to lose their housing.
So
does that make sense, Byron? Sorry, I know it's a lot.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, I gotta talk slower. I'm sorry.
Really, yes.
But what you explained at our last meeting was that people with a disability, not seniors,
Mhm.
tend to get a housing and stay on that. Now this is an opportunity to for them to have a different hat, if you will, and still have housing, to
Yes.
give them a little more flexibility
Mhm.
with our.
And then, yeah, and that would allow us to open up some spaces on the shelter plus care and transitions program that has that permanent supported housing. It would open up spaces because that program tends to just not have a lot of room on it. We don't get a lot of movement because we have a hard time moving people out. So it'll open up more spaces for people with that need permanent supported housing, like people coming directly from homelessness.
Okay.
And one thing I just wanted to mention on David's sheet, he mentioned under transitions of care that we had a shortfall.
Yes.
And since he wrote this, we applied to the Department of Economic Opportunities for additional funding. and we were granted $16,000. So that will make up the difference. So I just signed the contract on Friday. So we're all set there. They covered the difference. So we won't have a shortfall.
Super.
Any more comments on the monthly program updates from David?
Good job, Christine.
Well, thanks. Well, David did a lot of work too.
Good job, David.
Yeah.
Alicia, I wonder if you know David DeAngelis, who is our Section 8 and housing coordinator.
I think you're muted, Alicia. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't think I do.
Okay. As a new board member, you will be invited to, we'll go around and get to and meet people, because he has been both invaluable and very wise about connecting, particularly with private landlords.
Great.
So the financial review monthly checklisting is in green. And we have a rotating role as board members. Each month, one of us countersigns checks so that there's both some eyes on, hands on, and better awareness of the flow of the finances that make this possible. Any comments from board members?
Nope.
Okay. And then we are seeing the benefits of the professional accountants that we have here. And Christine, I'm going to turn to you to say, are there things that we specifically should notice, starting off with the monthly budget comparative for Brattleboro Housing Partnership that excludes A.W. Richards and RCC, Red Clover Commons?
So, sure. So I will go through this. So this brought us to the end of our third quarter, and we are now in the process of looking at creating our budget, which will start April 1st. We're a little bit, getting this completed was the first step. So we've been working on a proposed budget together, and we'll continue to do that. There were some pieces that we just needed to figure out based on COVID and based on changes in in some of our payments. So you know, as information progressed, we've been sort of trying to keep up and make sure that we're allocating for everything. So if you look at this, it's a lot of pages, I know that, but that first sheet is very helpful because that really shows you, this is really our bad properties and our public housing properties. And so that's a really good indication. I like to think of them really differently than than RCC and AWR, our LIHTC properties. Those properties have their own things going on, and we have a budget, we have that information in here, but this first sheet gives us a lot of information. And so if you look at it, there's a couple of things on your sheet that have been changed. I actually had asked James a bunch of questions after I sent this out, and he changed a few things. So I'm going to try to look at both versions really quickly. He didn't change the numbers. He just made it a little clearer because some of it was confusing to me. But if you look under revenues, right under section 8 admin fees, I think he had that as, I don't know what he had it listed on, but that's actually our SASH grants. So that's something to be aware of. I'm trying to find where. Oh, that's right here. I think it said state grants. So that's not all the state grants. I think a former accountant may have lumped other grants in there, but he just puts the SASH grant in there. And a lot of that is a pass through because the money comes to us and then we just send it right out. But so that was helpful. Another thing, if you look under expenses, you can really see that under administrative salaries, we're over, you know, we're about $41,000 over than what we expected. This is sort of this was a red flag for me, like, whoa, what are we doing wrong? And James and I talked about it. He said, well, you know, you were new and we didn't have we didn't have a lot of knowledge. We didn't know really what was going on the previous year. The budget the previous year was okay, but it wasn't great. And our numbers were sort of guessing at where we would be. Also, Chris's position is paid through that and will receive reimbursement for development costs and the fees that we'll be getting our FEMA money. and we haven't gotten that money yet. So once we get that, we'll pay ourselves back. We've been sort of paying Chris ahead of time, even though we haven't gotten reimbursed. And we didn't build in Chris's position into the budget because we didn't know what it would look like.
Can you just explain to Alicia? Chris Hart is the former executive director
Yeah.
who, rather than retiring, has stayed on part-time as development director and working on all of the, and we'll be talking about that in a minute.
Yeah, I'm
Well-
very aware of Chris Hart. I know her.
Okay, that's all right. I'm just trying to listen with ears that don't know, haven't gone through all of these things. Yes.
So just another thing just to make note of is under some of our expenses. So, our office expenses were higher this year. That's really due to COVID. And it might not have all gotten allocated to COVID, but there's a lot of expenses that we didn't allocate to COVID, like more printing materials. And
Mhm.
even though, because we print in-house, so it's not technically a COVID expense because we would be printing, but printing at home costs a lot more money than it does in-house, right? And so some of these costs are just kind of weird costs that don't really fit into COVID, but they really are a direct result of COVID. Another thing I would point out under ordinary maintenance, our contract costs look really good.
Mhm.
This is as of December 31st, and we know that we got a lot of snow between then and now. So we might be more on point. We might not have saved as much money as we think we did, although fingers crossed, we've had a very mild winter so far. So hopefully, sometimes we have snow all through March and April. Maybe that won't happen and we'll save a little money there. But I try not to get too optimistic when I look at that, because I know that third quarter is always a bear when it comes to contract costs. We spend more money on snow removal than anything else. So that's just sort of the things that jumped out on me.
Yes,
The thing that jumped out on me was
Jumped out to me, I meant. The things that jumped out to me when I was looking at the budget that I thought would be, that I needed clarified, that I needed information from our accountant. And those are the things I asked him about.
Could I ask about utilities?
Sure. Yes.
What magic did you use to keep electric costs down? So,
I think that this was just that we had budgeted that amount, and it could be that we over budgeted. I think our water and sewer costs will probably make up the difference. I think that number is going to be pretty accurate. I don't think we'll save money there.
Mhm.
But I think we paid the quarter after this, so it'll show up in the next comparable. But we do pay the electric monthly, and so I think it could be that we just really overshot what we thought we were going to spend. I would think it would have been more this year, but I'm not. But it seems like it's gone down a little bit.
Well, plus Christine, if you think about it, with COVID, there was less of everything going on.
Mhm.
After hours things,
Mhm.
less people working all at the same time, a lot of people working from home, less of the community events at the various places that you have allotted for that. I mean, that it seems small, but it probably adds up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are getting community meals. Like Everyone Eats is offering community meals. So maybe people aren't cooking as much at home because they're getting the meals. And so all of those things, I think you're right. I think there's like these weird residual effects that we don't think of, but I think you're right.
Christine, as we have people working from home and who have extraordinary expenses, how are we reimbursing them? How are they being covered?
We are reimbursing. So if people have expenses directly related to work, we reimburse them. When people started working at home, I mean, we created whole office spaces for people. We bought people desks and lamps, and we basically said, whatever you need, let me know and we'll buy it. And so we did. Everybody got printers, people got brand new laptops. We paid for usage of Wi-Fi if they needed extra Wi-Fi. I mean, cell phones, new cell phones. And so, I think the people who work from home feel grateful that they can work from home. in some ways. I think in the beginning we were wondering, like, should we pay for extra heat or, because people are home, but the staff really didn't seem interested at that point. They said, I don't think this is necessary. And, I don't feel like we need that. We would rather have the money in other ways. And so we've tried to help people out in other ways. We've been very flexible with time. A lot of people have kids. And so we've been really understanding, like, people probably aren't able to do the same amount of hours as they were doing in the office. And I think that we've been very fair with that. But we'll have a lot of printers when this is over. We'll have more printers than we know what to do with. We bought so many printers that it's like amazing.
You were saying that home is more than in-house.
Yeah.
You said that these are a lot of separate so forth.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry. Is that better?
Much better.
I'm just asking of all of the comparisons, are there any more that she thinks would be important for us to see, to note? Important for all of us to see.
Let me see. I think, the only other thing I could think of was just the operating subsidy. So it looks like we're short 77,000. We just drew that down after the end of the year. I just didn't draw it down until, and I just recently drew it down. So we're not short that amount, but we've received all of our operating subsidy. And I think the other thing to note is that as we're building the new budget, because James and I, last year we built the budget, but we're both pretty new. And we didn't have the historical knowledge. We could look at our old budgets, but that's all we had. Now we've been doing this for a year. We really understand it. So now I go in and I'm like, what is this? How does this work? Where does this go? And so I think this budget will be much more accurate, specifically around salaries. I think last year we weren't really sure about what the salaries would look like. And don't forget, we had to add a maintenance person because, a lead maintenance person because Jack isn't here. And we needed to, and we needed that, during COVID. We were just so afraid that we were going to lose, someone was going to get sick or we were going to be out. So we brought in David Dearborn, which was great. And he's been amazing. And then we also brought in a part-time person to help out a little bit with our residents specifically. And that was really helpful. So we have had some additional costs that we couldn't have planned for, based before COVID.
It is a treat to have these figures as easy and clear way as we have. Let us go to Chris Hart's report, which is orange. Still on target for the end of June completion for Red Clover Commons 2. Beginning to work on relocation.
And I just wanted to give you a brief overview. So of the people who live at Melrose, 13 of them would like to go to RCC 2.
Mm-hmm.
7 would like to go to one of our other RAD properties, whether it's Hayes Court or Sam Elliott. And the breakdown of that is 4 people would like to go to Hayes Court, 3 would like to go to Sam Elliott. And then we have 2 people that are looking for an apartment in the community using a voucher. So they're going to try that first. But we have apartments available. If they decide they don't want to do that, we have RCC. We will have apartments available for them. And so the hardest thing for us will be having apartments at our Hayes Court and Sam Elliott apartments available for people who want to go to those sites, because we don't have a lot of people moving out. And so we have 1 vacancy at Sam Elliott, which we're offering right now. We're offering to have someone move right away from Melrose. And so as soon as things become available, we will do that. However, at Hayes Court, we have a lot of studios and people don't, they don't want to move from a 1-bedroom into a studio. And so We're a little bit nervous as to how that's going to shake out. I didn't expect so many people to want to go to our other sites and not want to go to the new building, but we were really clear about the smoking policy, and I think it really has, I think it's really scared people.
So the Melrose PDMA, this is the project not only to take down, but to reform the land there. Can you talk a little bit more about the meeting?
Sure. So we had a great meeting, which was really helpful for me because it really laid out the sort of timeline of what's going to happen next. The design is just being finalized right now with FEMA. It's really close. They've been working on it for so long, but we're just getting the final design completed, and it will take up if you've been to Melrose since we've torn down those buildings, there's these slates. There's the foundation that's still there. And so we'll be taking those all out and widening the brook and deepening the brook. You know, we won't be doing this, but FEMA will be doing it. We'll be working with them. And the idea is that once that is done, it will allow the brook to swell in a way that will not flood the rest of Melrose, and it will not flood downstream. It will be a catch. And it's going to be a very extensive project. It's big, so it's gonna be big. So we really want to get the news out to the town. You know, I mean, the town knows, but to the people who live in the town, who might have missed that we've been working on this for 10 years, to really let them know what's going on. And also really talk about the last 10 years. You know, this August will be the 10-year mark of Hurricane Irene. And to really talk about, you know, the promise Chris Hart made was to relocate all of these residents. And she did it, you know, in 10 years. And that's going to be remarkable. At that point, we'll be moving people into RCC 2. We'll be widening the brook. We'll be really changing this landscape. So I think that will be a really great opportunity for us to really share in a very, again, deliberate way with the media. This is everything that's gone. Here's a little expose of the history of this and why we're doing it. Because I think people come by and they're, why are you doing this? And they forget that we had this traumatic flood.
By lowering the brook level, will that protect the bridge?
That is the hope, that it will protect the bridge and that it will really it will really stop the flooding further downstream, and it will stop it from backing up as well.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Moving to work.
So you received, did you receive, I sent you the ACC and, sorry, let me get everything together.
The lottery for the name.
Yes.
Which is first.
So the lottery for the name, so we had, these are the results. We had 13 people vote, and 53% Brattleboro said Brattleboro Housing Opportunities, which is really close to our nonprofit name, which in some ways I think is kind of great, because I think in some ways that's what the nonprofit was always made for anyway. So I think that's not a bad thing. I was surprised, but so that's good. So we will be using that name. And I also sent with you the MTW expansion potential the timeline. And the reason I gave you this was because I started to talk to staff, and I started to see their eyes sort of gloss over when I started thinking about getting this rolling now, because we have these big projects. And so I think the staff has decided that they would like us to not execute the ACC until July. You know, we're in moving to work. We're not going to lose it. It's not going anywhere, but that will give us a little time to then have the board understand a little bit more about where we want to go, do the work you're going to do on your end, and then the work we want to do on our end, and start our strategic planning, and then really start to engage residents in the beginning of the fall, which may also offer us the opportunity to meet with them in person.
Okay, so do we have potential motions, but I think from what I hear, we should postpone those potential motions until we are ready with the staff to move forward on that.
I think that's great. I wanted you to at least see what the ACC looks like. And that's the, sorry, I'm just trying to find it. Where did I move? My board packet's a mess now. So that is, that's the document that we need to sign in order to basically move, into this program. And so it's the annual contributions contract. And so, so I'll let you review that. And that today I sent out a link to a HUD webinar, and you don't have to watch the whole thing, but I think I sent it from like meeting 10 to something 25 or something. And they really explain what this is, the annual contributions contract. It's a lot of legal jargon, and I could explain pieces of it, but they do a great job of it. So if you want to watch that, that may be helpful.
And this afternoon, and it was very helpful.
And then this resolution, which we would, so Janet essentially would be signing the resolution. I would be signing the ACC, but only after I have after you send that resolution, then I have permission to sign the ACC.
So we all have copies of the resolution. I'm understanding that whether we pass it now, it won't take effect until you sign it and give it to HUD. So the question is whether we want, no, I'm going to back up on that. I think it's important for commissioners to read through and then at our next meeting to put doing the resolution, the board resolution on the agenda, with the understanding that you are going to wait to finish the contract when the staff is ready to do that.
That sounds good to me. And that way, if you have any questions, you have the time to send them to me ahead of time. You can ask me all month if you have any questions, and I can make sure to get you that information ahead of time.
Thank you. So I want to come back to the issue of board orientation and hiring a consultant. I think that I heard a general agreement that a single consultant, Nancy Mosher, would work best for us.
I so move.
Oh,
I'll second it.
all right. Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? What I propose that we do is see when Nancy Mosher is available and then poll the board for a meeting time that can be a mutual time for us. It will be a Zoom. It will be, I would think probably at most an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm sure we can't go much beyond that.
Right.
Alicia, if the select board in its wisdom appoints you, what a delight to have you join us at just this time. And your term will finish out the former board member who had resigned. And then, if you like us, I hope you'll come back for a 5-year term.
If you need a recommendation, put my name down.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions from you, Alicia?
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
Any questions from you?
Well, I wanted just to be open and honest. I grew up at Ledgewood Heights. I lived there for 25 years, and I currently have a loved one, my mom, lives at a housing site currently, and I'm her primary caregiver. So I just wanted to be open and forefront on that piece. Hopefully that's not an issue.
We used to have a resident as a member of the board until it was too difficult to find someone who was both, I won't say qualified, but who was collaborative in making the board work. So I couldn't think of anything better than having your mother at one of the sites. You're seeing it from many different points of view.
I think it's terrific. Your history is terrific.
Yes.
Thank you.
agree.
I submitted my application today, so.
Good.
Wonderful. That's great.
Great. I just got goosebumps. I'm so excited, Alicia. I can't share any of the information that Alicia shared, but I thank you for sharing it. And knowing some of that knowledge, I just can't think of somebody better that could really understand so many different pieces of our organization. And so I'm just so grateful for you to want to join us. So thank you very much. It's great.
Thank you.
And I've shared with some people in the board, but my first 5-year term, my second 5-year term will be up in the end of June. And I have told Christine that I will ask the select board to appoint me to the successor 5-year term, with the understanding that at 85, I probably should serve no more than 2 years. It's going to be hard because it's a role and an opportunity that's meant a great deal to me, but I would like to stay on the board for 2 more years with seeing you all as a really strong and continuing board.
And
So,
if at that 2 years, you want to put 1 more year in, it's perfectly all right.
my children keep telling me I'm not very good at saying no. So,
Well,
thank you.
thank you all. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Alicia. I'm really excited. And, I really rely a lot on the board, and it's just so great to have your feedback. So it's been really helpful for me in this transition.
Oh, I try to make these short board meetings, and this already is an hour and a quarter.
We had a lot to cover, but I just want to make sure we don't miss one thing. So there was one thing that we did miss, and it was under financial review. We do need to schedule a time to review the budget. And I was hopeful that we could schedule a time prior to our 26th meeting. However, it sounds like you might already be meeting, so it might be too much to have 2 meetings. So maybe we should just plan on reviewing the budget on the 26th. But I will send it to you ahead of time for you to review, and hopefully you could ask me questions ahead of time if you have them.
Right. That sounds
But
good.
we have the question about when Nancy Mosier is available.
Mhm.
And is there any preference on the board's part of days of the week that you would be available to meet?
If afternoons are best for me during the day. And Mondays and Thursday evenings are pretty much tied up with this and other other meetings.
Donna, how about you?
Yeah, the evenings don't work for me. I've pretty much lost it by then.
Right. So afternoons, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Byron, how about you?
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll be deciding on a time when we know Nancy Mosier is available.
Super.
And I will coordinate that with Christine Hazard.
So sometime in the afternoon, but not on Mondays and Thursdays.
Right.
Okay, great.
Can I just add how delighted I am that we're following the select board example and increasing our pay.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of psychic income that comes from this work.
That's right. That's right.
Indeed.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Alicia, you should know that every once in a while I get kind of giddy and say, all those in favor, please say goodbye. Thank you all for
Thank
a
you.
very good
Great.
meeting.
Thank you all.